Okay. So now we have to write some sort of condition here, right? Is James part of um, part of the list, right? So we can do something like this. And name dot equals name. Oh wow, I came back. I Yeah, I think I need to get a different adapter. Um, it's a good catch. That's what I was thinking you would catch. So yes, excellent. So now what you were saying is, well, either there's two things here, right? The question is, do we care about case sensitives, right? If the requirement comes up as no, right? I mean, we don't decide those things, right? If the product manager said no, I think the case sensitive matters, right? So then in that case, we have to make it. So then in that case, it will fail. Like, okay, no, James is James is not there in that case, right? If it's a lowercase. Um, so if we don't, let's say we don't care about it. So in that case, we can use what? Equals ignore case. Now, if I run this code base, um, what would happen? James is part of class, right? Let me raise your hand if you know how many times that loop was executed. Raise your hand. Don't go ahead. Yeah, one time. Okay, on the back. How many times? One time, right? Why do you think it's one time? Okay. Anybody else? Right. Yes, we are print. The loop was still executed 4 times, right? Even though James was equals to ignore case, yes, when the James was found, we just printed out a text. That's all we did. But this is the very bad thing, right? Because all we cared was James. Let's say if it was a 4 million values. So even when you got what you wanted, but it's like you got to your destination, but you kept driving, right? It's if you think from that perspective, it's bad, right? So what we have to do is we have to break out. As soon as our condition becomes true, we'll just say, hey, break out of the loop, right? We're done with this. We got what we wanted, and now we're gonna be, just terminate that loop and move forward, right? So in this case, it's fine, right? So make sure you're breaking out as soon as your condition becomes true, all right? All right. So let's do a quick exercise. What I want you to do for classwork, it's fairly very simple. I just want you to get familiar with the text. That's all. Create an array with all month names. Create for enhanced loop and print out the current month only. So just print me the current month that we have, which is April now, right? So just print out April from the list. Are we all done? All right. How many of you guys are done? Just give a few more minutes and I'll go over it. All right. It's pretty simple, right? You had to just create the month list of months, and then just go through it, do a quick comparison. So at some point, we're going to read this from somewhere else. Once we learn how to get current dates and things like that, or tomorrow and all of that stuff, right? Once we figure that stuff out, you're not going to be hard coding any of these things, right? In fact, you don't even really need this, um, because we'll use the library to read current month, yesterday, tomorrow's date, and all of that fun stuff, right? So pretty much that will do the job. All right. So now let's build something more realistic now. This is actually a login system that we want to build, right? That validates username and password. If both are correct, then we log the user into the system. Make sense so far? If they enter incorrect password, we'll give them X amount of chances, right? Like, okay, maybe you can enter invalid password or mismatch or whatever for 9 times maybe, right? And then we'll lock your system, something like that. So that's what we want to build. Part of the class work, I mean, in class, what we're going to go over is just one part of it, which is to do password validations, right? But for homework, you're going to extend that code base and make it into a full login system, right? And do more validations along the whole entire code base. So let's start with, I kind of put the steps here, what we're going to be doing now. So the very first thing what we want to do is we want to take the password from the scanner, right, from the console, because this is kind of our text field, and this is a good place where to use a scanner to take the data from the input. So we need to first, well, if that's the case, we're gonna have to first create a scanner instance, right? And so let's do that. So we say scanner, scan.
Would you mind just sharing that with me?
Which one?
The whole.
I'll share the whole thing once, because let's just follow through with
Okay.
it. Okay, we're gonna do each steps together. All right. So scan equals to new scanner. And we do system dot. All right. So that handles that piece of code. And then what we have to do is we just have to give a simple message to the user to enter the password now. So that one is easy. We'll just do out. Please enter your password. And then what we want to do is what? We want to take input from the console and storing that value into actual password variable. So let's create a variable And this is the password the user is entering. Does that make sense? So think of when you go into Gmail, this is the password you're entering, right? But when you signed up, there was a password that you decided for yourself that was stored into Google database, right? But in our case, we don't have a database, so we'll just hard code that value in a little bit. But for now, this is the password that you're entering in your before you log into your email. So we have to take that from the console. So this is what we're going to do. We'll first have to, password is usually a string, and then we'll say actual password equals to scan next line, right? So first now, you're telling the user enter your password, they enter the password in this line, we store that value into this variable, which we're going to be using in a little bit, right? And then finally, setting expected password, which is associated with the user account details in database. So in our case, let's assume this is our database, right? We'll say string expected password. And let's say expected password equals to techno1234. Okay. So in real world, what happens is we still have to create that variable, but we'll probably get this from a database. It'll be something like db.get password, right? So this is our when you sign up for a Gmail, when you sign up for the very first time, they ask you to select a password, right?
Oh.
So this is our password that, let's assume you signed up like a month ago, right? And this is kind of the password that we are going to be using. But I'm saying in real world, what happens is we don't hard code this. It comes from the database itself, right? Because remember, Java, once you execute it, everything gets deleted. Nothing is stored into the memory. Memory is pretty much cleaned up again. So therefore, but just for testing purpose, you don't want to keep making connection to a database. So even when we develop product, we don't really always access database, because that's like, connecting to another machine and getting the data back. We just hard code some stuff to test that out. And as long as the logic works, you're not going to test your code against 1 million data, right? As long as the logic, what we care about is the logic. We don't really care about the data in this case, right? So this is our expected password. So when you entering password on a console, this should be your password. If it's not that, then that's a mistrial, right? So now creating for loop. So now we have to kind of write a for loop here. So creating a for loop to give user max tries to enter valid password and log the user to system if correct password is entered. So this is very important now, right? So we have to write a for loop here. We'll say for int I equals to. So in this case, you might not want to use for enhance, right? Just because it's not really an array. It's kind of just a single value. You want to do a max tries. So you want to give a control of how many tries they want to do. So with for enhance, we can do that. So you have to go back to using traditional array. For loop. So we'll say 0. And then I would be less than 10, all right? And then I say, I plus plus, right? So let's put all of this stuff pretty much inside the array. Inside the for loop. This is where we're going to do all our work now. So the very first thing they want us to do is checking if actual password is not equal to expected password, right? Not equal to expected. We can do other way around, but we're going to use the not equal to, right? So here you have to write if actual password dot equals to expected password, right? So you're really not seeing any hard-coded value here. But this, how can I make it not equal to? I like you just say, you just gave the finger, exclamation mark, right? So that's great. So we'll be doing that. And now,
There's no dot, not equals
uh, unfortunately, I didn't make Java, so that's how they came up with. Um,
to. I'll send it to you.
you know, if you ask this kind of question, the reply will be like, "Why don't you do it?" and then put it a PR.
Oh, sure. You can.
Well, it's open source. You can put Java. If you have
Yeah.
some idea about Java, you can write it out. It's not so easy, but you can do it. And then you can go to GitHub. You can contribute to any code base, by the way. Python, Node.js.
I don't want to contribute for free. You know?
Well, it's open source. You're using it for free, but you don't want to contribute it for free. That's not cool. So, all right. So this is what we want to do. So far, are you guys following me here? It's pretty straightforward.
So while you are putting here the actual password expansion,
We're saying if it's not equal to,
so it should be after equals, not equals,
no, we are saying is if actual password is not equal to expected password, I want to do some work here, right? So one of the very first thing I want to do is subtracting the count of iterations, so user will have less tries. So minus on every missed tries. If it's not equals to, if they have not met my requirement, what we are saying is every try I want to subtract one. I want to subtract one tries.
How many I have after that? Like 7,
Right,
6,
right.
5, like that.
Right. So if it's initially we're starting with 10, now if they missed, if they were, guys, let's focus, right? If they mistry, we want to subtract each mistry. We want to subtract one, right? Until
Reminder.
until 10, and then we can probably, we'll do more condition as we go down the road, right? So now we have to create another variable to keep the count of tries. So we'll say count equals to 10 minus not 1 I, right? Because in each iteration we are kind of doing the subtraction, right? And then what we want to see is console message to the user to enter a valid password. Now, yes, I understand they have mistries, but you want to give them another chance. You want them to enter the password again. If they have another mistry, okay, based on the count, we want to give them another chance. Does that make sense? So we want to kind of just give them a message saying, out,
There's no form.
please enter
Correct password.
yeah, all of it is correct, right? So please enter a valid password. So we are doing that. Now, what we want to say is console message to let user know how many tries, I should say he or she, right? He or she has left with, right? So we want to try that. So we want to also give them not just saying, hey, enter a valid password, we also want to notify them how many tries they have left, right? So let's try that. What's this out? You have right? So this gives us an updated count each time, right? And then finally, number 10, letting user to update the actual password value with new input from the console. So this is cool. We're saying whatever the initial password was, now we're going to be updating that. Remember reassignments and variables, right? So we're going to reassign it. And this variable has a scope that is accessible within the for loop, within the if statement, because this is kind of at a parent stage. Does that make sense? So remember we done scoping. So since this is outside of the for loop and if statement, you can access them.
What's new about
it's not, I would, it's still a local variable. Field is inside of a class. This is still a method, but the scope is still in a parent level, right? So I wouldn't say it's not necessarily a field variable. It's a local variable, but it's parent to the other local variables, right? So you can access it. So what we're going to say is whatever the actual password was, which was the incorrect password, you have a chance to update it now with the correct password. And we'll say actual password, and then we want to use the scan again to take it from the user. And now here we have to do something else. We have to say, hey, if count equals to 9, then notify user with a custom message, right? 9 is your last try because, 10 minus 1 is count always starts from 0, right? So we'll say if I equals to nine, your account locked for
will it be locked or is locked?
what do you mean? Yeah, I mean, when is I equals, this is the last tries, right? So that's kind of what we are done with it. If any point, okay, if any point in the loop, user enters correct password, then system let user into a home page, right? So we're saying if any point, so this is where your if statement starts, right? If any point user enters a valid password, which means it will evaluate here, right? So if this code only gets enabled if the password is not equal to the actual password. So we should have an else statement here. Because if it's not equal to actual password, that means it is the password, right? So we can do something like this. We can say, let me bring this message here. Okay, let me now clean this up. We'll have right, and then maybe say welcome to the homepage. Are you guys following me so far? Right. So we're saying if it's correct password, then just give me system. You have success. I mean, obviously you kind of entered into the system, and then welcome. You're printing welcome to home page. In real world, it would be pointing to an actual page, right? So we will refer to the page that it belongs to you. Now, here's the question: we have to break out because even if it's else, it's still not coming out of the loop, right? So even if you get a correct password, if we don't break out, it's going to keep taking you back and try to reiterate. So that here, we have to, as soon as that becomes true, we are done with this loop. We don't want to do any more work here. So this is kind of a more realistic code base that you'll probably be writing in real life, but we're gonna make it much simpler than how it is now, right? But this is kind of baby steps to get there. So let's run this code and see if it works. So please enter your password, right? So let's try the positive scenario first. You always want to try the positive scenario first, so at least things are working. So this was our password, right? Techno1234. That's it, right? So things worked. Now we want to do is another test of negative scenarios. Enter your password. So let's just put invalid. Enter your password. So there is a bug there. So that's intentionally put in there. So you guys have to fix this for the homework. And then let's say you keep entering password. Right? But any point, if I enter a valid password, it will say Techno1234. Welcome to the home page. Does that make sense? Are you guys following? So I know it's a lot to take, but that's okay. I mean, you guys were studying that other while loop homework was similar to this, but this one is not done here. What we have to do is we actually have a homework around it. What's up?
In the first one you give me, you have 10 more times.
Yeah, it's a bug. It's a problem with the code. It should say you have 9 more tries. Right? You can fix that.
No, just
I know. Just guys, all right, let's just go over the homework, then we can take a break and we'll start with objects once you're back. So homework is create a system that checks valid username and password. So we've been checking just password, but that doesn't make sense, right? We have to make sure the username and password, and if they both are valid, then only system displays homepage, which is the message that we saw, right? User can only try up to 5 times with invalid login details. If it reaches 5 times, then system should be locked for 10 minutes. Fix existing bug from the system, right? So we do have some bugs here. Test that out, find those bugs, fix them, and then also update your code to make meet this. This should not be an extra credit. This should be just part of homework, but I'll just put it. I don't know what the credit is. Maybe a Starbucks card. A verified password length is greater than 8. So you can just kind of also check what is the length of the password, right? Verified password has at least 1 numeric value. That one, we didn't go over it. Let me see if you can mess around and find this. Google around a little bit. Verified password does not contain username. So you also want to verify the password should not contain a username. So now we have a little bit more complexity to the code base. Don't try to solve it right now sitting here. Take a breather. You have over the weekend to kind of work with, and then Saturday you can work with Deepak and Asan to show your work a little bit and take it from there. Are we clear? This is a pretty straightforward homework. Are we good? All right. Any questions from online? One second. Guys, let Nirmal answer and ask his question. Go ahead, Nirmal.
So actually, it's going back to the case sensitiveness issue that we were seeing in the previous, like in that sandbox file. So like when we actually define a case, we do like, let's say case in the quote unquote milk with M capital, right?
Right.
So how do I ignore the case, while in the switch case scenario? Because I can't really do like string, like name dot equals ignore case,
Yeah,
because
so
I
in
need
that
to.
case, you're gonna have to just do. It's gonna be case sensitive.
Yeah, in that case, it will have to be case sensitive.
Yes. All right. Any other
Thank you.
questions from online?
And can you just show that screen for the class exercise, that
Oh,
the month of December?
right.
I just wanted to compare mine.
Okay. All right, everyone. Let's meet back at 8:20. When you go home, test it out. Test the code out. You gotta find the bugs.
It shows that please enter the password. When you run it, it shows that please enter the password.
Yeah. The bug is when you have to write test cases to test the scenarios. Remember, we're in test cases, and if you think the system is not working as expected, that's called bug, defect, right? So you have to fix that defect. So first find it and then fix it. That's how interviews are.
No.